You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Lenard with NACS.
And I'm Stephanie Sikorski with NACS.
And today, Stephanie, we're heading into summer drive. Driving's picking up. What are retailers doing at the pump to attract people and get them inside the store? Today's focus is going to be on the perfect pit stop.
I love it already.
So today, talking about the perfect pit stop, we have Sarah McCrary. She is the CEO of Gas Buddy, and she's joining us by phone today. So welcome, Sarah.
Hello, Jeff and Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
So for those who aren't familiar with Gas Buddy, what's the elevator speech on what Gas Buddy does?
Yeah, Gas Buddy originally started off as a fuel price discovery app. We help our users find the best experience in fuel and convenience, given fuel prices and convenience options.
And originally when you started, of course, the name Gas Buddy, I think for most people, it just communicated the price of gas. And looking at some of the research, looking at some of your findings over the last few months, it's really a focus on much more on the experience. The perfect pit stop, those are 3 Ps or 2 Ps. Neither one has price in it. So how has it evolved from looking at what is important related to the fueling that was always price to, hey, there's a little bit more going on than just the price?
That's right. Gas Buddy primarily exists for our users. And our users care about more than just price. And that's why we do talk about the experience. About a year and a half ago, we allowed our users to start reviewing their experience at convenience stores, everything from the in-store coffee, the lighting, the restrooms. So the experience that the consumers had started to become just as important as the price. And so we listened to our users. In fact, we are constantly interviewing Gas Buddy users to find out what is important to them, what's going to add more value to Gas Buddy for our users. And we kept hearing that it was more than just price. We've also had some research that's been published that says the same thing. Price is important. It does make a big difference in people's behavior, but it's not the only consideration. So we've opened up our Gas Buddy app to be more than just price. And so we even allow our users to leave full text reviews, and they leave interesting information for other users. Everything from, this is a really easy parking lot to get in and out of, or if you have kids, great clean bathrooms to stop in. So we've really found that this whole idea of perfect pit stop is an all-encompassing experience beyond just fuel prices.
And I think, Sarah, you brought up something that's really interesting. What might have started out as convenience, and certainly that's the business that we're in, has really evolved to the experience. And I think whether or not it was intentional or more organic, you all have really created a community that's quickly growing.
That's right. Gas Buddy is actually a 20-year-old company. Started off as a website of folks that wanted to give heads up to other folks in their community about price spread in different stations, and went to mobile. Then when mobile platforms became very popular, I've been at Gas Buddy for a little over 2 years now, and we just are continuing to innovate and open up more to be useful to our gas buddies in their experience, whether they're using us on the web or on the mobile platform. And it is consistently about the experience they want. And as food service becomes more and more a part of convenience stops, we are seeing our users leave more information for each other about, hey, this place has our favorite type of pizza. So it's really fun to see that community kind of signal to each other and get stronger. And it's more than just about price reporting.
And we're going to dive into some of the more, I'll call it more serious items here and unveil some of that. But I am curious, from the community posting, you all must get some pretty unique things that are there. Can you share one or two of your favorites maybe with us?
Well, I think as it goes, people tend to want to share more of the negative things. So I will tell you that there is a convenience store and fuel stop in my neighborhood that I've looked at. The funny thing is people talk about this isn't, safe. Don't stop here at night. But if you do, they have great coffee. So it's like, wow, that's kind of a mixed message. But then we do get people that just want to express their love. And especially in regions where you have strong brands that compete against each other, we see people posting things like, and I don't want to privilege one brand over the other, so I won't say the names, but you can imagine we'll get people saying, hey, my brand rocks. It's so much better than the other brand. And we had Kellyanne Conway, who was an advisor to the president, actually tweeted out one of our customers' reviews. So that was actually a fun day when we saw that come out.
It struck me in just the brief time we've been talking so far is that the phrase Gas Buddy, the name Gas Buddy, originally started Gas Buddy. You were a buddy to the customer, but now it sounds like your buddies are all the customers, all the consumers who are kind of defining what the perfect pit stop is and how it all matters and what's going on at the local station. Hopefully more good than bad, but we know the way people communicate. So has there been a little bit of an evolution in the term buddy and who it means?
Well, I think in the term, yes, buddy connotes that we are a friend of our user, of the consumer. And while it did start off around the value proposition of fine, cheap gas, we have expanded that across all these other dimensions of the convenience retail experience. Buddy is, I think, something fun and friendly, and we certainly try to maintain that. When we talk about the perfect pit stop, we really are also trying to give both the consumer and the retailer tools to make sure they're making the right decisions for themselves. We talk about our mission is to help our users save money and make the best decisions, and we help our retail partners as well take that information and try to deliver that perfect pit stop. Especially as it pertains to in-store experience, whether it's bathrooms or coffee or food service.
And also, one of your recent surveys was talking about how people are spending, I can't remember the exact number, it was close to 50% are spending more than 5 minutes at their station. And because the average fill-up is less than 5 minutes, they're obviously doing something else besides filling up, and that means they're going inside the store. Your research lines up fairly closely with some of the things that NACS has found, that 1 out of 5 people go inside the store to go to the bathroom. And we also know that people who use the bathroom over-index on everything else in the store. They buy more snacks, they buy more drinks, they buy more of everything. So how do you look at the measurement of how people spend time? Is it when they click on or click off, or seeing that trend that people are spending more time because they like where they are and they want to pick up some items?
Yes. So there's a couple of things in that question. One is just how do we measure that time that they spend? And then the second is, I think you're asking, what is it that's getting them to spend that time there? So I'll talk about the first thing, the how we measure. So in Gas Buddy's mobile app, we actually have a set of sophisticated mobile location tools that help us understand the amount of time that someone, when they pull up into what's called a geofence area, which is usually around 10-meter area of a convenience location, we can detect that and we can record that. We don't record who that is, so we don't record any personal information. We just record the location information. And then so that's called the foot traffic. So we can actually use all of our location technology to produce this understanding of when people are on a location and then how long they spend there, because when they leave that location, now we have a duration. Here's when you entered and here's when you left. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts behind how we do the measurement. The why, I think, is such a fascinating question because it really is the key to continuing to unlock advantage in convenience retail. So certainly we know that price drives behavior. And now we're seeing and understanding that convenience and additional services like clean bathrooms and available food service options that really are expanding the draw. But overall, we are seeing another trend that has kind of confounded us, and we're digging into it a little bit. So I don't claim to know everything, but this other trend is that we have a payment card called Pay with Gas Buddy. So we can see all the payment transactions across a population of 500,000 Americans. And what we see is that a majority of our users are filling up more than 4 times a month. And 65% of those that are filling up that frequently, they're going to multiple brands. So this is an interesting thing for us, because why were they going to those multiple brands? We're going to keep digging into that as we understand this behavior more and more. But what it tells us is it's not just price, and there may be other elements of convenience or offering that's drawing people in. The flip side of that is it means that majority of users are really not loyal to a single brand.
Yeah, and I think that was something that was really interesting when I was reading that report, the death of brand loyalty. And that stings a little bit, right? Especially as a marketer, you want to think, well, my brand surpasses all things. And of course, there's folks that love mine and are tried and tested and true. And you noted here in one of the quotes that unlike grocery and apparel retailers, the fuel and convenience industry is servicing a truly brand agnostic consumer. So one of the questions I think for those of us that are listening is, how could you use Gas Buddy or a tool like Gas Buddy, an app with all of the data and the insights that you have, to get smarter and maybe, going back to something that Jeff said, create that perfect pit stop?
Yeah, I think it's a recognition that experience matters and that you can change that experience by listening to your consumers. So that one of the tool sets that we give both our users, our consumers, is the ability to leave these reviews, to talk about their experience. Was the staff kind to them? Did they have a fast fill up when they went in for coffee? Was it delicious? Do they want to share those experiences? And then on the flip side, we give our retail partners the ability to gather that data and then communicate back to those users, which is really, I think, the brands that are leaning heavier into this idea of the experience are looking for ways to connect. If say, Stephanie, you left a review that said, hey, I went in for my morning coffee and my usual person was just rude to me and made me feel bad, we can actually give the brand a way to address you directly and say, Stephanie, really sorry, come in next time, coffee's on us. Those are the kind of personal responses. And by the way, then everybody in the community can see that, and they can see your brand really cares about their customers. So those are the things I think really savvy marketers are picking up in the industry, that completing this loop of connectivity with the consumer is really important. Leaning into that, creating the perfect pit stop, becoming that magnet that's more than just about prices to bring people into the store experience.
Yeah, I love what you said there. And one of the things that I've been reading a lot about, and it's not new and it shouldn't be a novel concept to us, but creating those human moments, especially when we're talking about so much disruption and digitization and everything's in an app and it feels like everything's cold. But there's still ways, as you're saying and describing here, for people to provide that warmth and show that there's heart and someone's listening.
Exactly. And that, for a one-to-one relationship, you're building that one-to-one relationship, but you're also signaling to everybody else that happens to read that review or read that, oh, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to feel like this is a brand that cares about me, that it's not just, as you said, like a cold corporate-like experience. So I think kind of going back to the idea of the perfect pit stop, it is about the holistic experience, and consumers value that. One of the things that we see with this kind of the death of brand loyalty is we're digging into, on the flip side, why are people loyal to a brand? So if, on the aggregate, for our group of drivers who fill up more than 4 times a month, the 81% who are not loyal to a brand, well, then there's a group that are loyal. What's driving that? And that's really where I think some of our next research is going to focus on.
And you already teed up a little bit talking about payments and some of the future things you're looking at. And I think the future is really important to see what are some of the other things you're looking at. And what was very interesting about Gas Buddy is Gas Buddy, as you alluded earlier, started in the year 2000. People were freaking out over gas prices. They were $1.48 a gallon, and it's the end of the world. It was also 7 years before the smartphone. So you've obviously, the business has evolved considerably where most people think of Gas Buddy now as something that's on their phone. But you're also looking at what happens with the life cycle of the driver, and where is the competition, and what will people care about over the next decade or so when they fill up or something fills up a car that services them. Are there one or two trends that you're looking at that might be something that we'll notice in 2-3 years, if not now?
Yes. And I would say, whenever I think about future casting, I think of my favorite science fiction writer who wrote, he said, the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. And that's kind of what I see today. The future is around mobile commerce, specifically in all the fuel pumps that are becoming effectively internet connected devices, right? So as EMV rolls through the industry, upgrades are being made. The idea that a pump sitting in a forecourt is now internet addressable, meaning it's connected to the cloud, which means we can now use a mobile phone to activate it. That is out there today. It's just not widely available, and it's going to be more and more. And I think it's going to be more and more the case that consumers get used to starting their fill up from their mobile phone the way they start their coffee order, right? And that gives a whole new cast to the way we communicate with consumers. If they're stopping in for a fill up, now I know where they're at, and I know that they've activated the pump, and now I can also hit them with some targeted advertising that they may care about. Is this a mom on her lunch break that's looking to get a fill up fast and maybe just jump in the store and get something for dinner, right? Those are real user case scenarios that I think that the growing movement of mobile commerce across all segments of our retail experience, and specifically to convenience retail and fuel, are going to be accelerating, right? It's going to be like a snowball effect. And I think the other big trend, which has to be mentioned, is really around EV, so the electric vehicle and autonomous vehicles. I think that all the research that I've read, different rates of change in the automobile population, but we know that our users generally change their vehicles about every 7 years. And we know that right now with electric or hybrid vehicles only being a small percentage of new car sales, that while it's an exciting trend, we think it's going to be at least another 2 decades before the majority of vehicles on the road are some form of either electric vehicle or hybrid with liquid fuel. That's a little bit of one of those where everyone's forecasting a little bit differently. So how do we think about that as Gas Buddy? So we think that there's still going to be a very large community to service that are looking for their fuel needs. And we also, because we stay very close to our consumers, we see the opportunity that as EV charging becomes more in demand, that gets added to the amenities and to the experience. And we talk about the perfect pit stop. For some of those users, that's going to be how fast and how many EV charges are there, and then what does that mean for me while I'm waiting for my charge to go in the store, right? So many new dimensions, I think, of the perfect pit stop get opened up. We're not scared of it. We're embracing it. We think it's going to be, it is the wave of the future, but it's also a slower wave than I think what most people expect.
And Sarah, you talked about seeing the opportunity and not being afraid. And one thing that I think that's been great with your team is that you have so often explored the what ifs. And Jeff talked about how you all have evolved over the years. One of the things that really stuck out to me, and we're talking about summer drive, but we're also coming into a disaster season, and there's a lot of hurricanes and other things. Our industry certainly has been committed as really first supporters for a lot of the first responders in that aspect. And with Gas Buddy, you all have contributed to what that might look like from a disaster relief standpoint, and how you might be able to make some availability of information for consumers and both retailers. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, I'd love to talk about this because it's one of the things that is really feels good about being on the Gas Buddy team. So because of the location services that I spoke of earlier, the technology that we have, and then also because we have this really engaged community that is accustomed to reporting information, sharing with the community, our team developed what we call the outage tracker. And so we've worked with organizations like FEMA and local relief organizations and first responders to provide both information about where users are reporting power outages, gas and diesel outages. And what that helps with is, for our users who are evacuating, it helps them find a place to fill up that can service them. They don't have to drive around and take a gamble on where's the next available station. And users in the time of an emergency are so good about updating this that we activate a special feature in our app called the Emergency Outage Tracker to give them this very fast feedback and ability to report power outage, diesel outage, and gas outage. On the flip side, the first responders who are going into a disaster area need to know information also usually about where diesel is available, because it's a little bit of a different profile of user and they're going in while everybody else is going out. So we use our user base. We ask them, hey, help out your community, report these things to us. We also activate a price gouging where we ask a user, hey, if you think someone's gouging prices, take a picture, send it to us, and we'll save it. And then if the state's attorney general or anyone who's investigating this wants proof of it, we'll always have it. So it's little things like that would try to be a positive impact to the community. Then our media team works with FEMA and state and local to get the word out. Use Gas Buddy, report this outage information. We then make that data available at no charge. We do not make any kind of money or promotional off of this feature. It is strictly something that we do to help. And even retailers who are not our customers, we invite them to share their information about their network of stations and fuel stops so that we can incorporate their data into everything that's being reported also by the users or crowdsourcing. So we try to get both sides of it. We try to get the retailer data and the user data, marry that up, and then provide it to the media and the disaster response organizations. It is really motivating for our team to be able to help out in a time like that.
And that's where the perfect pit stop is basically any pit stop that has fuel, because it's yes, you'd like a great sandwich or a cup of coffee, but you need gas or you need fuel and you need to get out of town. And we really saw that a couple of years ago with what took place in Florida with Irma. And you had 20 million people that were essentially leaving a narrow pathway and they all needed fuel. And there's also some discussion as how do EVs get fuel, because they got to charge pretty regularly to get out of harm's way. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to look at how we can all be part of the solution related to disaster relief and getting people out of harm's way and getting things back to normal as quick as we can.
Absolutely. And even after the events like that, we continue to collaborate by sharing our data so that especially organizations that are trying to anticipate the next hurricane that's going to hit Florida or Texas or big population, they're thinking ahead. They'll use our data and say, oh, what did people do? What was the movement that they did leaving this area? And how can we make it better? So we continue to help even once things have returned to normal, so to speak. We continue to try and help in the background to prepare for the next event.
And one more thing before we wrap. One of the phrases I also love that I saw in one of your recent press announcements was you talked about the last block. And I know we've heard the phrase the last mile. It applies to the internet and how does things get delivered. But the last block struck us as something that really feels like community, and it feels like what our industry wants to be as much as we can be. We want to be part of that block, that area that everybody knows each other and is able to look out for each other. Can you talk a little bit about what the last block means to you in terms of how Gas Buddy thinks about the industry?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, the last block really is the concept, as you said, about that deep into the community. And when we think about how online retail has disrupted, the big box experience and shopping in general, we realized that the last block, which is serviced by convenience retailers, is much harder to dislodge because of that close affinity and proximity to where people live. It's the ability to really be embedded in the community and in close proximity to people as they're leaving in the morning, coming back at night, running errands. And the whole idea of convenience, we believe that, in the convenience industry, the convenience retail industry just has a stronger day-to-day relationship with the consumer. So in everything that we do, we're trying to, again, extend the idea that for users, Gas Buddy is your best place to come for information or to share information about that last block experience. And then for retailers and then other businesses, that the way you connect with that consumer is through Gas Buddy. And so we see really being that meeting place in the digital experience for what is, I think, one of the most important physical retail experiences.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And of course, anybody that wants to learn more about Gas Buddy can either go to the website or download the app and learn a little bit more. NACS has fuels information at convenience.org/fuels. Marries up very well with some of the things that you're talking about. So thank you for being on our show today, Sarah.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.